Hello and welcome to the Wednesday night report.
The Wednesday night
The Wednesday night
report
report with Matt.
With
with
me.
Matt. Matt, you've joined us finally. We've
I
got
have,
Matt
I
on
have.
the docket. Matt is now hopefully going to regularly join us for rep stuff, so that way me and Preston don't bust our butts for three days every day and go life is so hard.
You say that, Shaur, but
We'll still do it.
I
We'll
was
still
about to
just be
say,
there.
I've known you and me and Matt from a content perspective for a few years
Well, all
now.
three want to be on all the time. We'll be like,
Brother,
let's just
ain't
all three
nothing gonna
join today.
change.
Yep. That's the way it goes sometimes, though. But hey, it's better to be competing for spots than to be, or not even competing for spots, but just chomping at the bit, ready to go, than to be, trying to get people on
Yeah.
board.
100%.
It's absolutely
100%.
true. It's absolutely true.
Chat, tonight is the long awaited, the much anticipated, the many times described game development night. We're going to be talking about strategy changes, map changes, what we want to see in RMNA, maybe some tweezers or teasers about what we think RMUC could tweak or change, maybe some predictions for what RMOC will do next year. I don't know what these guys have planned. Shaur's tried to keep it very under wraps.
I think I'm cooking. That's why, and I also think it's crazy, and that's why I'm like, I need to get live reactions to some of this. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got the whole PowerPoint.
Shaur,
I
you've
do
got
got a whole
YouTube chat, right?
PowerPoint.
Because I want the live reactions from
Yes.
y'all as well. I want to see what you
I
guys
got YouTube
think
chat. Don't worry.
about
I got
all of
YouTube
this
chat up.
mess.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a great time. I'm really excited. Where do we want to start, guys? Where do we? I guess before we do anything else, Preston, we should just let Matt introduce himself to the Robotics Esports viewers who are not necessarily RMNA viewers. I don't think there's a lot of them, but it's good. It's good to let ourselves get our boy in. So Matt, why don't you give us a quick introduction of yourself, what you do, what your hobbies are, what your interest in RMNA is, how you started, all that jazz.
Yeah. So I'm Matt Blackwell. If we haven't met yet, I started in 2019, coming from high school, first robotics team 7121. Shout out to Keller, Texas. But looking for something like that to do in college. Found RoboMaster, fell in love with it. Was just like, man, actually Preston that direction on the screen showed me, or was at the Memorial Student Center at A&M and preaching the RoboMaster gospel, and I fell in love with it then, and stayed with it. Got invited to do commentary for it, and because we just needed people to do commentary, and I was like, sure, why not? And then that got me involved in the whole production side, but still love doing the robotics stuff. Was a team lead in 23 for the Century for Texas A&M, and then was on the electrical team, dart team, aerial team, kind of just bouncing between a whole lot of different teams as needed. For Texas A&M, then graduated, went and did three-phase power stuff down in Houston, Texas, doing substation design, and now I'm working with McNeilis doing refuse trucks, so garbage trucks, things like that, and on the R&D new product development team for that. So glad to be here and excited to see what we're going to get into talking about the new maps and stuff today too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, Matt, incredibly excited to have you around, and just in general, get to have someone that we've worked with already. We've all been on commentary. We've been here. We've been doing this for a bit now. It's exciting. It's good stuff. But yeah.
All right, y'all ready to dive in? We've waited long enough.
In.
The people have waited long enough. Let's jump into this mess.
Long enough.
So I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna take us through my dreams, my hopes, my aspirations, and we'll chat about it. We'll kind of bounce around the room.
Sounds
Before
good.
you
Sounds
is
good.
the beautifully made, revamped 3v3 RMNA field, and
yes,
I just want to say
this is the one of this year.
I love it. It's great.
It's a good field. It's a good field. I have my issues with it now after having played on it,
really?
but I do love the start of it. We can kind of get into it a bit. I guess let's talk about the good first, because you were talking about how much you love it, Preston. What do you love about this field?
Okay, things that I love about the field. I think it complements the new game super well. The center point being the main contest is really important, right, for the game. But when we watched RMUL in China, the fact that center point is contested by the robots and doesn't really have any terrain blockage, in my mind, made it feel very much just like a big 1v1. Like, it didn't matter that the middle was in the middle. It's just whose robots could win the fight, right?
Yep.
It felt like passive points were very not important, Whereas in RMNA, I saw so many games come down to passive points. There were a couple teams that would win through sheer kill victory points, not many. And once you got up to the top 5 or 6, those games were so close that it was those passive points, right? It was who has control of the center buff, really deciding between like UW and RHIT going for another 2 minutes or ending the game right there. A&M winning by like a freaking point at one point. Like, it just crazy things happening because of that central buff point. So I do really enjoy the rough terrain, the longer map, the distance. This long distance, I mean, even for the fastest sentry, right? 4 seconds from the zone.
4 seconds is crazy, though, for how accurate they can get on there and then start patrolling it.
The other thing that I really like that teams found and exploited this year was this line of sight right here. We saw heroes, we saw standards. We saw maybe one sentry actually fire from there. A sentry that wasn't super mobile was able to just post up there. And I thought that was a neat avenue. It provided a strategy option. Yeah, and like John's saying in chat, I actually really like the elevation we have. I hear him calling for some tweaks. I predict that Matt and Shaur are going to call for some tweaks. My take on the elevation is this. Give the teams one more year. I want one more year of not changing the elevation. I think teams need more than the like 6 months that they realistically got from rules drop to like comp to design robots and strategies around that elevation change being there. We did see teams use this section both offensively and defensively on both sides of the map. But frankly, because most teams were too scared to go off the drop, either they had difficulties or they hurt their bots, I think the elevation could totally be utilized more next year. I think the teams are still cooking. That's my feeling on the elevation.
All right.
So that's,
you want to go first for your elevation opinions?
If we're going elevation opinions specifically, and I think this was a mistake on our part as designers, and I will take some responsibility here because I didn't consider it as well. I think the problem is the elevation isn't involved in the center at all, right? Like when you're on the elevation, you're not really able to do anything about the center buff point. You're kind of like you're in your own little zone, a bunker zone. It's nice to be able to peek maybe, but I think the biggest thing is that we took elevation and played it like an actual FPS. There's one major difference between an actual FPS like Overwatch, like your CODs, and this game, and that is that your hitbox is not at your head. It's at your feet. So being at higher elevation where people are aiming can actually be a huge disadvantage, especially if you can't aim down, right? And so I think that I agree, Preston, maybe people will cook about that, but I think like just objectively so, there is not as much incentive to be on elevation unless there is like something to hit that's at an elevated area. And I have some ideas about that, but I do think that elevation needs to be moved a little bit. It's not in a great place right now where I like where it is.
I would be interested in having elevation that comes like closer to here, but I actually really like the current, like having the ramp on the capture point side and then the drop off on the base side. It does allow for that protected, like you're saying, your head can be exposed, right? So the protected vantage point from the base is still there. I want to see teams use it as an escape route. We saw so many kills in this hallway, right? We saw drivers like Rishi chase bots down. And I think if you give teams another year to realize, we can't drive the long way back. Or, I mean, we watched that one game. Remember, VT had like a hero here and like a standard here. And it was the one time their sentry didn't look super clean because it tried to go back and it got stuck.
Yep.
I love that this little choke point is too narrow for all 3 bots. And I think in a year, the competition will push teams to say, hey, the standard needs to make the jump. This can be the hero and the sentry, right? But you can't stand the standard, hero, and sentry all in that same area.
Unless you make really tiny ones, in which case you're giving up other things. It's a trade-off either way. Except for saying
on a retreat, your primary focus is already just getting back, and to take a large risk whenever you're not in an active engagement, you're not pushing to maintain position, you're retreating to get off of the point to go get resupplied, to either go buy projectiles or heal yourself. Your main focus is not to push forward. And so like I understand the choke point kind of as a nice place to, if you're not coordinated, or like it kind of encourages that kind of team coordination, but it's like we only saw that a couple times. Obviously people would slow down if there was like a hero coming out and a standard going in, but I think there's one thing you do to fix the elevation as it is right now, and it would be perfect in my opinion. Put the ramp on the other side. That's it. All you have to do is change that, and now you have a very large advantage of, now you can have a jump to go back and have a second path back if you don't like that choke point. Otherwise, your path back, you're still involved in that choke point. And then that at least gives you a nice place to go up and gives you a second entry point if you want to avoid that choke point, or a team is holding that choke point on you and you're able to go over a different way out. Because a lot of complaints teams had this year was specifically that getting out was very difficult sometimes whenever you'd have just like two robots just right there ready to lock you down, and that was difficult. And so to solve the out problem, you can get out there, but now you got to fight your way back. And I think that would allow for some interesting gameplay as talking about the choke point, right? Now you have to fight through that choke point if you can't jump, which would be an engineering challenge to do and have a pretty significant advantage. Harder on the way up, but then after you get there on the way down, that's an easier go. And you're not at risk of running it on the way down as an easier go as well. You're not at the risk of hopping over, and if another robot's in the zone and you go and you're not able to really control yourself going off the edge, that way it would incentivize teams to be able to use the elevation a lot better. And it wouldn't require much change on the field design and stuff like that. People are already be familiar with the kind of style, but you'd at least be able to use the elevation. Because I think the retreat is just not really worth it to go and do all the extra work, to do all the engineering, to get one extra retreat route, whenever a lot of teams that would be doing that in terms of a strategy of not being able to like use that, or like not being able to coordinate, would already not be probably of the mind of trying to over engineer what they already have and just want to try and get a, like, not minimum viable product, but like, we don't need to be going off the edge. We can just take the normal route, just go one at a time. That makes it a little bit easier. That's at least my thoughts on it.
I think I kind of
I don't hate putting the ramp on the other side. I think even maybe decreasing the slope a little bit might help. We saw a lot of teams struggle. I don't know if we fixed that for them.
Even if that's a level thing, you can at least just be like, oh, we all go out the same lane at first, but then once we get a kill or two, get a couple levels, or sit on the point for a little bit, get a couple levels, now we can all of a sudden come back, and then we can come out a way that they're not expecting. And I think that would allow for a lot more interesting gameplay. On the initial first out, it doesn't really matter if all three robots take the same way, unless you're going on a speed thing. But VT was the only team that we really saw that had a sentry that was like competitive at getting to the middle.
Yeah.
So
what do you think about this? This is just a crazy one. This is not something I thought of, and then I wanted to get to my main idea. So let me pitch this crazy one out there. An ugly pancake first.
Mm-hmm.
What if there was a ramp that was like had a middle gap?
Oh, so it's like you could fall off the ramp to the left or the right, essentially. So
or the middle.
basically.
Like these don't have to be the whole size of a robot. We could have the robot, like drawn to scale, right? The robot could be this big. And you could have to kind of line it up. They would be obviously wide. That way it accommodates a range of robot sizes.
Yeah.
But I think you could fit all robot wheelbases within a pretty decent gap. And it would still, it would cause teams to have to slow down a little bit there to have good driving. Like, it wouldn't really do anything crazy. I think it might just be neat. Like, it might just be this added little thing. I don't know.
I still think if you did that idea and flip the ramp and then did that on the retreat so that you had to really take your time to kind of like play monkey ball trying to get up just that tiny little edge, I think that would allow for, because then you have to either jump or take your sweet time getting up that ramp.
Yeah.
Which could make you get killed on the respawn. Yep. Yeah. I was gonna say my only issue with it is that it's like, I worry about designing in a way that makes it so teams feel like they need to optimize like a size requirement for their robots. I want to see varied robots, right? But I think there is something to say about size. I agree, and that is part of the engineering.
and I raise you RMUC.
Okay. Yeah, the tunnel.
The tunnels, the bridges,
The
right?
tunnel.
Specifically for forever. RMUC has almost always had some sort of underpass.
Yep.
And it always is there to encourage compact robot design because smaller is better from an engineering perspective, right? If you can build the same bot, but you can build it smaller, you've built a better bot.
It's true. You are correct.
But I don't know. Okay, so let me pitch you my actual one. That's my ugly pancake. Because I feel like probably everyone has one big idea they're trying to champion.
Yes.
Yeah, John. It would have to be the ugly pancake. Would definitely have to be a balance. The risk reward on a split ramp. But if you made it pretty easy, like if the split was pretty small, it would be really funny if teams tried to go up it spinning. Is basically what it would do. Is it would make sure you were good about turning on and off spinning. But the idea that I'm actually pitching, my RMNA ops proposal, as it were, right? As someone that's just a low man, I want the engineering technical challenge to happen simultaneously with 3v3, making it 4v4 on separate fields. Okay?
Yes.
So you would have a red lane and a blue lane right next to the bases of each team. And then the red engineer bot would be chilling in here with his little claw. And there would be cubes. There would be cubes on the other side. And because RMOC, has some qualms about developing new software, you could just go back to using the hardware. Go back to using projectile receptacle cubes. Put them on the far side of the map. They're holding hero shots. Let's say heroes get to start with 5 projectiles or something. Could be 0, but I think 5 is more interesting because it incentivizes a certain type of feed mechanism as well, or the ability to feed with low projectile counts. It also helps your teams that perhaps don't have an engineer still be able to use their hero at least a little bit. 5 hero shots is quite a bit for like the early game. And then, I mean, the rest should be pretty dang self-explanatory, right? You've got your little engineer bot, and now it drives across, it brings the cube, it sets the cube on like a stinking folding table or whatever. It can go into a receptacle if we want. I liked our plywood receptacles this year at RMTC. So you put it into the receptacle, and then there's just a human. There's a human on this side, one of the actual team players, like they used to use for the drone reload at RMUC. You used to have a human that was allowed to refill the drone's hopper at RMUC. That was a job. And now they can just take projectiles, take them straight to the resupply zone, boom, fill up the hopper of your hero.
Yeah.
I think it goes from 3v3 to 4v4 without any implementation of additional software. I think all of the hardware that we'd need, we've pretty much already built. It brings in the engineer, which is, in my opinion, the biggest roadblock from top RMNA teams to translating to RMUC, which would kind of further pave the path of using RMNA as a launch pad, as a runway, if you will, for RMUC. And I think visually, it would still be very understandable, right? You're not adding a lot of more video game aspects. It's just like, hey, the projectiles, the golf balls are over there. So this robot's going to go get the golf balls. It has to put them in this receptacle that's at this weird angle and whatever. And then the human can open it. We could even close them. Like if we want, like you could seal the top of these would be easy, right? We could get some kind of sticker paper or something to go on top of this. So that way the engineer could manipulate the cube however it needs to get it into the spot. The only downside I see is that this is going to be really heavy with golf balls in it. It's what it used to be, but nowadays the engineers are built to pick up just pure foam cubes, which is really light.
Yeah.
Well, then would that kind of not go with a slight bit against your point in terms of being able to pick up a heavier object versus picking up and maneuvering a much smaller object and maneuvering it in a more precise way, I suppose, versus just like a big one? Or is it just kind of like the introduction to having the engineer? Because you'd also have to have the ref system on board, right?
It would have to pass inspection. I'd treat it just like the engineering challenge. You wouldn't need an active ref system like in the server. We wouldn't need a new server. And it doesn't even have to be the projectile filled ones, right? This could just be one of the gold cubes, and then you could have a bucket of projectiles, and for every gold cube you cash in, you get to take 10 hero projectiles, right? We could have them like in paintball canisters, and we just hand you a new tennis ball canister of 10 projectiles every time you cash in a cube. So we could use the actual RMUC cubes. You wouldn't need it on the ref server, which would be helpful. So that's my beautiful pancake.
I like it. I've said this before. I really want to move towards 4v4. I did, however, write this in our documentation when I was talking to the operators. I had said before comp, if we hit like 6 sentries, I think it's time to make teams like 6 good sentries. It's time to start making teams think about an engineer as well. I'm like, I think it needs 1 more year to cook for a 4th robot that is impactful, right? I think this is a good way. This is a good way to do this in the first place. If we're going to do a 4v4 without like a ref system change, I agree. This is the way that I'd want to do it. Make it like a very like physical modular kind of addition and not really necessarily like a full software thing. However, I still think it's like, I really want teams to just make their 3v3 bots super good so we get like a really solid, like all the way through bracket. Like we still didn't have 3 functional bots in all of top 8.
Yeah.
Right. And that's frustrating.
Because we had good top 8 matches, though. Because the 2 human-controlled ones that most teams were fielding were pretty good. But it's just like, I mean, even all the way at the end, right?
Yep.
With CU having the incident, unfortunately. And their hopper breaking and not having a replacement part for that. It's like, kind of makes it difficult to be able to compete against the Titan of VT without an entire unit that, at least on VT's side, like makes their team phenomenal. Right? I mean, their user control robots are great, but like that sentry was a beast. And yeah, until you get a couple more of those kinds of sentries being able to compete against each other. I mean, CU was the only one that even held a light to it whenever their sentry was up. And I mean, their sentries would box, their sentries would duel, and sometimes it'd be a draw. Sometimes one would come out on top of the other, and it wasn't always VT. So I think until we have a couple more, at least kind of like what Shaur is saying, where it's like at least the top 8 having that kind of a sentry, I think, before you go on and add another extra robot, because then you're just going to end up with it'll be harder for teams to transition from 1v1 to 3v3 as it stands. And as we currently are developing more 3v3 teams, it'll be harder for the 3v3 teams to kind of focus on the traditional 3v3 bots as opposed to also doing an engineering.
I disagree. So let me rebuttal a little bit here. If we made if you started with, let's say, 20 hero projectiles, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of your bottom 10 teams even try to build an engineer. I don't think it stops them. I also don't think it changes their competitiveness against all of the other teams in comp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those bottom 10 teams are still fighting against each other with 2 functional bots if we add a 4th bot or not. Frankly, that's the answer.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at the top 10 teams. The top 10 teams, the bottom 5 of those, so now, team 10 through 5,
mm-hmm.
I think are going to optimize to just try and use these 20 projectiles and keep focusing on getting a sentry built. They already aren't competitive with your top 5 teams. There's not a team this year where I'm looking at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and saying, they almost made it to number 2 or 1 or 3. It just didn't happen.
I think Purdue had a chance if they weren't in the bracket from hell, but
but they were in the bracket from hell, and that's something that there's something to be said about Group B and those the 2 teams that could have probably made it out and done decently. Keeping in mind also that one of those teams does have an amazing engineer and was first in the engineering challenge or second in the engineering challenge with a solid score. Oedo Samurai. So I think that NUS and Oedo Samurai would obviously get a huge buff from this, and NUS being 5th as well is something to keep in mind when it comes to their ability to do this kind of stuff.
For sure.
And so I agree in that regard that there is something interesting there, and I think that it's an interesting idea. I'm nervous about giving teams another challenge of engineering on top of it, where I know, because we're all Robomaster kids. We get absorbed a little bit and that's the cool challenge. I want to try that. And then you don't necessarily do what you should do and optimize the thing you care about. This happens to every team, right? And that's why I'm I really want to give them complete focus on the 3 robots, which is what I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah, John in chat saying that there are teams outside of the top 5 that can be legitimately argued for potentially a year away from contention. Yes,
It's
there are
true.
probably 7 teams that weren't even close this year where if they had a functional sentry, they're totally in the mix. Right? You've got your
Oh yeah.
like A&Ms for the 16th year in a row where if they have a functional sentry, they're in contention. I mean, your UW this year was frankly not in contention because they didn't have a sentry. I mean, just so many of them. So many of them. Duke looked freaking good if they can get a sentry and a hero, right? But like, if you gave those teams a sentry, like if they were able to build one a year, yeah. And that's why I'm saying if we made the engineer useful but not super useful, then it would become a delineating factor between your top 5 teams, and then for the rest of the field, the other 17 teams, it would still be, can you build a functional sentry that drives and shoots? Shaur, I do agree with you 100%. We talk about it every year several times that teams struggle to have the, maybe humility is the right word, to look at their team and say,
I think
okay,
the
let's design a
focus.
strategy around what we've got.
Yep.
And instead they get caught up in the let's build the
This is
coolest
cool.
thing, right?
Yeah, and
Let's
I think
add
it's a
super
focus
caps
thing
and CV everywhere.
because we're engineers.
Yeah.
We want to do the fun engineering things, and I get it. And it's not as fun to optimize, to refactor, to make things like better just for the sake of being better. You want to do it in a way that seems impressive and seems cool. And I think that the engineer specifically falls under that. Right. That's my only gripe is that I think that teams will not self-select themselves like you're saying they will, because I haven't seen them do it before and I'm nervous about it.
So my
Right.
other point about that self-selection though is I'm a little
Mhm.
bit okay with it. If
And that's
next
fair.
year the teams don't look super great, but every team has a mid engineer, I feel like
Mhm.
as a region that puts us a big step closer to being important in the RMUC scope. Whereas if
That's
next year there
true.
are still only 2 functional engineers in the whole region, but we get like 10 more functional sentries, I still think we
Mhm.
are another 2 years at least from being relevant in the RMUC scope. The sentry, in my opinion, is actually less important in RMUC than the engineer is, especially at the international level, where you just need
Yeah.
gold and you need a hero that works. And if you have an engineer that works and a hero that works, you're going to be fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah.
I
That's
want to
fair.
funnel NA teams and international teams back to China in a competitive manner so that we can call a little attention, have them put some respect on the name of the region.
Crazy idea. Crazy idea. We bring the engineer in, right? It's still 3v3 though. Hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. I think so. This is one thing I really loved about previous years that is absent this year: the ability to do comp selection, dual standard versus
Yep.
standard hero sentry. Right. I think what you do is you say the sentry can be swapped out for the engineer if you want to prioritize your hero. Thought process, and it's the same physical engineer you're talking about right now, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
thought.
then,
It's an idea.
yeah, I think that creates a further. Well, it all depends on if you're making gold that,
I think
or
I think you
if you
have
were
to do
limited on the
gold.
hero projectiles still.
Yeah.
But adding the gold is a software thing, so that would have to be
Yeah.
something that would
Yeah.
make it a little bit more
Yeah.
complex in that regard.
My
Versus how
ideal.
Preston's idea doesn't necessarily interface with the server per se.
Yes.
If you have, especially if you have the engineers on kind of like just practice mode, as long as they pass
It's
inspection
true.
and all that.
It's true. My thought process here is really like we need to do a software change for this, but my thought process here is like, what if we just bring it in like the true full way? We add like 2 resource islands, and it's like either you use them or you don't. If you have an engineer, you can use them. If you don't, you don't, right? And it's a little extra econ for you. You get to like utilize it. You maybe see some top teams like select like, oh, I really actually want a lot more gold here. And maybe it's like you don't even say, oh, only sentry and hero can swap, or sentry and engineer can swap. Maybe say any of the 3. You pick any 3 of these 4 for your 3v3. It's ideas that I'm thinking because I want to start prioritizing maybe some team. I think this is one of the things that's really interesting about like Overwatch and other hero shooters that are similar to this, where they have these capture point, King of the Hill style maps that we don't get to do as much, which is like comp selection, right? Like, yeah, you build your characters out, but if we can't have the full 7v7 lineup, being able to swap out parts of it could be really interesting in the 3v3 environment, right?
Yeah, I could definitely get behind an idea like that, especially, but it'd just be harder to implement for the team. Like, what if everybody decides that they just want to do Sentry, or only a few teams decide they want to do Engineer? Especially if you talk about Engineer being counting for the kill. If you're just sitting there just trying to line up your forks to grab your grab your forklift, or not necessarily forklift, right? Because you're usually the teams who use suction, as we saw this year. They're just people to like vacuum onto the cube and then just move it and take it wherever they want and put it there. But it's just like, you're a very easy target in that regard, and trying to make an Engineer with spin to win, especially with the expansion stuff. Yeah, and as Preston's showing, money.
It
That's
does cost
a lot
money.
extra more. But I mean, building an Engineer in the first place is going to cost more money anyway, right? Like,
so it's true.
Man, my money signs is my last take, and then we'll move on because we can't keep y'all forever, and we're still in person 1 out of 3 here.
Oh, yeah.
My last take is maybe what the game needs is prize money. I know.
Oh, we
it's a
talked
dirty word in
about
RMNA.
this
I know. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I know.
Okay.
I know. I understand everyone's aversion to it. That's why I came up with like winners hoodies or whatever, right? Something that no one is. They're bummed and they want it, but they're not devastated. To John's point in chat, to my point on here, to things we've all talked about with our teams. Engineers love doing engineering. Most of us join RoboMasters because we want to build cool bots. And then you get to comp and you're like, it's okay. We built these really cool bots. Like, obviously you want to try and win, but like you're more focused on, can you build the cool thing? And so you worked super hard to build the cool thing. There are no stakes is what I'm saying. There's right now, if you win, awesome. If you don't get first, what? You play it like 1 match less? Like you lose a little bit of bragging rights in the community? That's it. That's really it. And I'm saying if there was a bigger incentive, perhaps teams would finally start to focus more on being competitive. Maybe if they realized that they could build cooler bots next year if they did better this year. So I'm not saying first place gets all of it. That's why I drew this ramping scale. I want to see if you get out of groups, you get paid. If you make top 5, you get paid. If you win, you get paid more. Right? So it would be a sliding scale. This would need to be outside sponsorship money. We would need influx of cash coming from the Rep channel donation and Red Bull and I don't know, the Society for Mechanical Engineers and all sorts of places, wherever. But I agree that this cannot be cash coming from teams going to VTCU and UW every year.
Yeah, I still struggle with the rich get richer because it is an engineering challenge. And it's like,
I mean, as we
having
saw,
more to throw at
4 years,
okay,
4 years of UW domination was a lot, and they're still top 3. So like, the Titans seem to stay where they're at because also a lot of it's kind of like a little bit of trade secrets to an extent, right? Where after you kind of understand CV and you have your code base and you have a bunch of people that understand it and are able to work on it and are knowledgeable on it, you are already leagues and leaps and bounds above other teams that have not even looked at doing CV yet.
Yeah.
And that's a huge advantage, right? So like, I agree with the incentive, and I think like hoodies or things like that, like having like championship hoodies would be cool, and being able to like have that and sport that would be really cool. I would be fully behind that idea because then it's not necessarily cash incentive, and I don't know.
But hear me out. Listen, I think the sport of RoboMasters is actually a lot less pay to win than people think. If you give UW 10 grand, do you think they win this year? Like last year, if you gave them 10 grand, are they hurting for cash? Is that what kept their Sentry incapable? They just didn't have the money to fix it? Is that what prevented RHIT from making the push? I don't think it's money. I don't think it's money that's keeping these teams at the top. I understand there's a financial barrier to getting a team and to like building your team and your first 3 bots. Once you're A&M, once you're UW, VT, Purdue, NUS, once you're the top 10 teams, I don't think $5,000 changes your builds at all. Maybe it changes some aluminum part to carbon fiber part. Big whoop. That doesn't change your competitive advantage 1 iota. I think the cash makes people uncomfortable, but I don't think it's pay to win. I don't think the money keeps the same teams at the top. And I think it's the only thing that would incentivize teams to say, hey, if we win, then we get more cash. What's that really going to do? It's going to decrease the dues that students are paying. and relieve stress on their wallets. That's why they'll be motivated. They won't be saying, oh, our team will get so much more money and win better. The team will get their money from winning comp and not from taking it from their students. And so it'll be easier and less burdensome for teams to have their students. That's what I think.
But what team has been in contention for top 4 that hasn't had funding issues? Or that has had funding issues or has had retention rates? I think a lot. I mean, we all do this for the love of the game, right? Like, I think everybody who is also competing is competing for the love of the game. Like, you're not paying money, you're not paying dues, you're not giving away so many hours of your week as a student to go and do all this kind of stuff just to be like, what happens if comp stays at comp, I guess. Like, everybody wants to do it to win. I struggle to find the lack of incentive that teams would have. I think A&M was
Matt,
caught on
you're
the back
from
foot this-
A&M. You
I
were
think
in
they were
the
caught on the
leadership
back foot
meetings.
this-
You were in the leadership meetings where we sat down and said, are we going to try and be a competitive team or not? It's a real discussion that teams are having on if they even want to try to be competitive.
It was competitive in 7v7, not and I
No,
believe
RMNA, someone in chat, someone go get all the A&M folks. Back me up. RMNA
I do
3v3,
not remember
A&M
this
constantly
meeting.
argues on whether they want to be a learning team or a competing team.
I
They
have-
want to build
I have a-
engineers and
I
students.
have heard that.
Hold on.
Crazy.
I have a thing. I think I understand your point, Preston, and I'm kind of almost agreeing with it. I'm close, but there's one thing that's still kind of getting me, and it's the fact that, like, if the money isn't significant, what's the difference? Like, and it doesn't really change too much for teams. Like, I get the dues and such, right?
Yeah,
But I don't think
it's
these
not
teams
significant to the
necessarily-
teams, but it is significant to the
Yes.
students. What if,
Insignificant-
like, if
it's
you
a
get
significant-
10 grand,
Sorry, I wasn't
UW's
done.
robots don't get better,
Hold on.
but your flights get paid for.
Where are we getting
Hold
10
on.
grand?
Hold on a second.
Holy.
Hold on a second. Let's back it up. My question is, and I think John's kind of hitting this in the chat as well, right? It's like, I don't know if it's enough to make them care, right? You know what I mean? That's what's really getting
Bro.
me. So it's like, I don't even know if like 10 grand, like, even if it helps the wallet and such, I don't know if that's enough to make you be like, I want to go from top, like, to make Tamu say, I want to be a competitive team. I worry that it's still like a hard discussion to have because it's so much investment up front to try and get first to get that prize, which is why I'm like, I'm interested in the idea and I see your point, and I'm just curious, like, where we think that stands. And I want to hear from teams in chat. If you're here, you're on a current team, what makes you, like, what incentivizes you to play, right? To help teams ask for sponsors, university funding, maybe. That's also true. You bring back something home.
Yeah.
That is also true.
Universities especially, yeah. And, I mean, John in chat is saying that they won't care about hoodies.
I agree. They won't care
Agree.
about it.
I will love them. I think the hoodies will be dope. I think the team that wins will love them, but no one's playing for the hoodies.
No one's playing for the hoodies.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, maybe what if we just rephrase it, right? What if it's optics? What if optics here is the issue? What if the top 6 teams get an RMUC travel stipend, which is like 12 grand to help that team travel to RMUC in that or future years? So it's still just cash. But we've now worded it in a way
Dedicated
of
to
saying, hey,
use
if
for
you're
some-
winning at
I
RMNA,
like
we want to
that.
see you go to China. Here's some extra cash to help build your new bots.
I actually really
I
like
would
that.
agree fully
That's 100% awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think giving a blank check for any kind of development is just going to lead to just kind of like fat cat behavior, where you just kind of have the people at the top just kind of stay at the top. And it's not like everybody wants to win, but it's like, it's not really helping the teams that are up on the top of that as much as it would just be kind of like making it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I do
in
want to
chat
point
saying
out, I mean,
RM is just really different from other robotics, which makes them inspired
Yes.
to compete, which is another
Yes.
like, yeah, that's nice.
yeah.
But
I mean, and all of us
think
put
it's
in
true for
years in
everyone.
RoboMasters with no prize money. I'm not saying the teams need prize money to get motivated to
I think
compete.
it's nice though.
I am saying I think we would see teams shift their competitive strategies if there was 12 grand on the line to help them get to China. If there was 20, I do agree it needs to be a big amount. Like 10
I think
grand
that's
is
interesting.
the floor of what's useful.
Yeah.
I think actually when you phrase it like that, where it's like a travel stipend or something, I think it becomes a lot more interesting to me. Even like, I'm even thinking like if I was competing, so I'd be like, oh, I want that because I want to prove that we're good enough for China. And then it's like, if we prove that we're good enough for China, we could just go,
Yeah.
right? Like that's awesome. Like that's
Yeah.
a really cool like way of taking it. I think that's the strategy. I like that. I think it's a
my,
way of
my
doing it.
video ninja froze, so I think I'm gonna have to close out and come back in a second.
Oh, we can still
Sound
hear
good.
you though.
We
Chat.
can hear you.
Can you see me?
No, but your frozen
it's
face,
frozen.
Tiny, is fine. And I can still hear you. I've got the stream on my phone, and I can still hear you there too. So don't back out. Just hang out for a little bit.
All right. Oh, well,
Oh, you're back anyway. We're
Yep.
good.
Do not use Opera GX. Every time you pull out a tab, it like destroys your entire computer.
Anywho, that's my whole thing. We got to move on from my ideas. But Matt, is that you on the side? If I scroll sideways, is that what you want to look at?
Yes. Mine's really simple, so that way Shaur can close us out with the plethora of ideas on the PowerPoint. It's King of the Hill, baby. It's a hill in the middle,
God.
and you just got to capture the hill. And it's pretty much similar standard to how we had it designed in 2023, where you have kind of like the side barricades, like at the different areas. For here and for here, these are just like tall walls. These are the short walls, all along the sides. And then this is the elevated surface. And so we want teams to have suspension. Well, you better get suspension if you want to get passive points. And then you just have to actually get up onto that. And that's the very, very simple way of doing it. Because you could even have the map this year, right? And have just like a single ramp. So like only having this side as a ramp, this side as a ramp, have the map from this year, same way. But now you have to get up onto the middle or jump from the side. Could be an interesting way of incorporating jumping into it, or teams are just going to take the ramps that would be there and get rid of the top and bottom ramps. But otherwise, if you just had at least like a 20-30 degree incline, something to make sure that teams are able to actually traverse that, to be able to get up and get on the point, have a little bit of a, I mean, I guess as Shaur was kind of saying, somewhat of a little bit of a technical disadvantage depending on how you build your bots. Obviously, this would incentivize you to be able to have the depression, to be able to actually angle down and be able to attack while you're on top. The real question is how much of that would actually make it easier for other teams to shoot you if there's no other cover around there. But yeah, King of the Hill would be my suggestion, just raising the hill platform to actually be a little bit elevated. But other than that, you could make either no changes to the field or do the ramp changes we were talking about earlier, or just go back to the old 3v3 kind of field with the hill in the middle and still have your walls for different kinds of gameplay, different lanes, different areas of occupation if you wanted to be on the sides. And that's kind of nothing too super fleshed out in specifics of what could be over here, because you could have the rough terrain on the sides or rough terrain coming out one way, so that it kind of, if you want to go out smooth, you go out one way. If you want to go out rough, you go out the other. Lots of room for interpretation.
Right now,
but
streaming.
that's
I love that.
that's it.
Hi, you're in the video.
Hi, Preston's wife.
Shaur says hi.
I had to. Matt, I think that first off, I'm mad because where I was going to build my like whole PowerPoint was something similar with the King of the Hill style, and I was going to talk about specifically TF2 and King of the Hill and how like they do the map design there. So I'm a little upset that you beat me to the punch a tiny bit, but I also agree like this is a very interesting idea. I think you mentioned like putting the rough terrain down is important. I think that's a big thing, is like where does rough terrain go in this kind of style, and I have an answer for that soon. But yeah, I like the general idea of King of the Hill being like an elevated section for the center buff point, because I think one of the big things is that the center buff point was like not that dangerous this year, because people were not coming up the second lane. You kind of knew where people were going to come from. It wasn't that dangerous to be there, right? And I think that if you're making progress on the objective, you should be a little more exposed. I think CSGO does this really well. When you're planting bomb, you can't do anything else.
Well, all those examples that you gave also have multiple lanes of attack and entry. And that's why I was saying, even if you just flip the ramp around on the current field and just had the other side, like that's close to the base, be the side that's ramped, then now all of a sudden it is more dangerous to be there. They can peek from cover, they can peek from elevation, and all three of those combined could lead to a pretty significant change in how teams are able to play the middle. And also, like you said, have that kind of like fear of, okay, which way are they going to come from? It's a 50-50. Your FOV is not going to be broad enough to be able to see both of those at the same time. So you got to pick one and have your teammate pick the other, have your sentry guard one and use your bots guard the other. I think that would I think there's a lot that you can do with the elevation. To make it a lot more exciting for sure.
I agree. But yeah I think this is a good step forward. I like the idea of forcing people to use elevation. Like, hey, you're gonna do it. Like, if you want to score points in the center capture point, congratulations, you're going there. The only criticism I have is the field is super open, but not like very like there's not a lot of like choke points or like line of sight is very straight.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of left to be open to interpretation or open to movement. Like nothing necessarily would be locked in, and like you could add cover over here or change the way that these play out. Like all this is kind of just like a pretty rough idea of all this to say elevation.
I agree.
I like it. So, I like it a lot. It's not even a drawback, but I think the difficulty level for the sentry would definitely go up.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
significantly.
But that's where you could go from the sentry being something that could actually get onto the point and be the sentry that's something that's patrolling around in a different area, making that area in particular a little bit more dangerous.
Yeah.
It does make the sentry's role more interesting, in my opinion, because if you can do both, it's even cooler, right? Now it's like you're forcing the sentry to kind of adapt to like playing more like a sentry would in RMUC, where it's like it's not actually actively ever going for the objective in RMUC for the most part. It's going around to make the objective harder for everyone else. Right, increase difficulty, maybe the cost sentries. Yeah, this is exactly what we're seeing in chat as well. They're asking about like, oh, sentries is kind of tricky, and that's already scary enough to do. And it's like, I don't want to drop my $1 million compute module down across like an elevation and kill it.
But all the bots who don't want to tip over.
But that's where you have this be just like, even if it's a slight incline, it's at least something that makes it a little bit more difficult to get on and off the point. That makes it take a little bit more consideration, slow you down a little bit. You can't just so quickly, as we were seeing this year, just boom, 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 like going that quick. You can't go that quick. Or if you can, because you designed your robot well enough, then, props to you, right?
Real. All right. I think that a lot of the rest of the things I'm going to say, Preston, if you want to swap to my screen, I think that this is going to be an interesting little time. I'm going to give a little bit of a presentation here.
I do want to swap to your screen. Here we are. Quick sketches, none to scale by Shaur.
They're not to scale. Keep this in mind. None of these are to scale. I'm going to start off with a image from one of my favorite like game design like articles I've ever read about FPS map design. This image here, it's called the whiteboard test, and it talks about how people design maps. There are 4 levels here, and I'll kind of break it down a little bit. Beginner is like messy, crazy, just throw shit in there and just hope it works kind of thing. You're not really thinking about the actual design, the sight lines, where people are going to move, etc. Right? Intermediate is like this boxy approach, and I think that's where we usually fall in our game designs. It's like the intermediate side of like, it's boxy. There's not a lot of like, it's room hallway. You're not really going into like angles of like attack. You're thinking about like moving around, but you're not really thinking about looking at each other, attacking each other, so on and so forth. Advanced is more about you're adding sight lines. You're talking about like differentiation, maybe even some asymmetry is getting involved. It's still a video game level, but it's better. And then expert is like you've taken a real world like concept and brought it to a game in a way that feels seamless to the game, right? I think I can apply a lot of these concepts to RMNA specifically in field game design. Let's start with the beginner map, and the easiest thing to change about the current map. As you were saying, Matt, flip the ramps. It's very simple in my opinion, and what I did here was I flipped the ramps and I made the walls 0.8 meters high for a very particular reason. When you come up on the ramps and you get to the high ground, behind this wall, every robot still has to either extend to go over it to shoot, like the standards have to extend up a little bit to still be able to shoot over it, or heroes can just shoot from there and be protected, right? So you can kind of chunk into the center point, right? Which makes it more dangerous. Or if you don't have a like tall hero or you're not designing for that, you can also just use the exposed area at the bottom/top, depending on which side you come from. This gives 2 angles of attack, as well as making a way for you to attack the center point while still remaining relatively safe. That causes the enemy team to have to reposition or have to like actually interact with you, right? Because I feel like one thing I'm scared of doing a lot is like, not forcing interaction, not forcing you to come off the center point to interact at any point. And I think that that's one thing that we saw a lot of this year. It's like you could just leave a bunch of robots in the center. They would just keep on fighting in the center. And I'm like, I want to try and pull you off the center to interact or take the center. I want it to be a decision, right? When it comes to that. And I think this adds to that in general. And then, I think this also still preserves one strategy I actually liked. And I think that people may not like that I like this strategy. The Hewed-up strat of I knock you out in the center point because you overextended in the center point. And now when you're going back, I'm blocking your one like true way of retreat. And I get to get a second kill for that reason. I think that that's actually something that's interesting because it incentivizes not getting knocked out so far away from your spawn. It incentivizes going, I'm low, I need to start moving back, right? And I think that's something I like to have in the strategy of like thinking about your positioning, right? And I think this map starts to actually talk a lot more about where you should be at any point and where you should be is not always obvious. It's no longer obvious to always be at the center point if possible, because if you're at the center point, everyone's there. Now there's a wall that they can shoot over and hit you, and you can't hit them back, right? Thoughts, ideas?
My one thing would be a little bit on the software side, but probably nothing too difficult considering it's just one value. Kills are now 10. I think
Fair.
if you made kills 10, because you're going to be going for contesting the center point, you're going to be making that more of a big deal. You want to devalue the other way of scoring in the game. Because we saw a lot of teams get a ton of points.
I agree.
Over half or like 80 points ish, like a lot from just kills alone. And so I think if you're going to try and change up how the center point is easily accessible from before and not as contested, you're going to force more interaction in it. You have to also force more incentive to be inside of it. And so I think even just something as simple as lowering the kills to only be 10 points, as we saw, teams were handily crossing the 200 threshold with plenty of time left from just either sitting in the center and getting kills alongside that, or just getting a decent amount of kills sitting in the center for a little bit. That would incentivize not just focusing on kills and being like, well, we're just not going to go to the center point, because if we can kill them in less than 10 seconds, it's better for us to just keep killing them than to go to the center point ourselves. And so and one thing would be also like with the ramp, if the ramp wasn't like, if the high ground extended all the way down to like that rectangle went all the way down and the ramp was scooted a little bit farther back, you could have a little bit more high ground that you'd be able to actually like shoot on. That would be not, you could have a little bit of cover there and then have, okay. I didn't know.
So
if
the idea,
all the way up.
Ramp is actually just like here. I'm just saying that this is the ramp direction. Once you're at orange, it's high ground. So just assume that like the ramp is like about the same size as it was like this year. That's what I'm trying to go with here.
Yeah. Other than that, all I would just be saying is like my original point, right? Just making sure that if you're not decentivizing, but making it harder to get to the center point, that you also incentivize the center point more by devaluing the other mechanism of scoring.
So one thing about it that I really like in this situation is that it's like, if you want to get kills, you have to kind of leave the center, was my idea. Cause I was like, I feel like you should be picking a little bit. Is it still a good idea to keep it one way in? It is not one way in. It is objectively two ways in.
Yeah.
I want you to have suspension. I know this is something that might be frustrating. The
even three, technically, right?
There is. So the best part about this, and I'll come into the next game, the next map design I have talks a lot more about like loops and how loops work in like CSGO and DE Dust 2 specifically. We'll get into that. But the interesting part here is that you have like you can perfectly circle here over and over again if you build your robots correctly for the bottom half of teams. Yeah, that's my thing. Is the thing, if you're engineering poorly, I don't think you should be gaining the full benefit of the field, right? That's my personal take on this. I think that I want to incentivize good engineering more than anything else, because this is not just an esport; it's also an engineering challenge. And if you are unable to take this top ramp for whatever reason, right? I think that means that the decisions made for you here, you now have to think more carefully about this section, right? And how are you going to navigate only going this way, right?
Yeah. As well as you're not losing the value of the high ground as long as you're able to get onto the ramp, because you're still able to see from up there.
Here and stay
as opposed to how it is
back
this year, where it's really only a retreat option, because nobody's going to go up on the high ground this year and try and turn around and then shoot, because you're exposing yourself on the way up. You're not really gaining that much from being farther away from the center point. Like, this incentivizes a higher ground placement that's closer to the center point, so you're able to directly contest it from the high ground. And whether or not that would be beneficial for you is all up to how you design your robots. So I think that does still let any team be able to benefit from this by just simply being able to go up a ramp, right? And the ramp elevation, as we saw, and as Preston had noted earlier, like some teams at level 1 and lower levels were having issues doing that. But after you're able to just kind of go and get a couple levels, or go and sit in the middle at least a little bit, play the game in some capacity, then you can come back, have more chassis power, be able to get up that ramp, and then be able to actually occupy the high ground and do meaningful actions on the high ground that you would be able to do on the field. But it's not just one way in. It's more like multiple ways in, one way out, if you can't jump. Or if you added the Preston ramp of like the tiny little way of, you have to kind of carefully retreat. That way it's like you can do that if you're able to quickly, or if you're either able to quickly figure out that where your wheels are. But yeah.
So I only have one thought on this one. I love it. I think it's great. My only issue is I think this makes the comeback mechanic more difficult. I think if you have a high level robot, you can stay on the high ground, and you have a line of vision all the way back to their corner.
Yeah,
right? So if
no,
you're
that's
on the blue
true.
team on the high ground, you can just pan back and forth on the high ground and cover both of their entrances and if you are level, a couple levels ahead, I don't think they ever come back. I don't think they can come out of their base. And we saw teams like CU like kind of start this, right, where once they got the level advantage, they'd go sit on the bumpy ground and guard that wall corner.
Yep.
But that means they're far away. They're now on the enemy side of the map.
You're right.
So if you can chunk them a little bit, you can make it out of your base. When they have a ramp straight from their re-health zone, from the fountain, from the base, whatever you want to call it, straight up to the high ground, they can just stay on the high ground, keep you from coming out of your side of the base. And I think the stomps would be more stompy. Like I don't think there would be much of a comeback.
You could just extend the wall up a little bit, right?
Well, I was going to say, even besides even extending the wall, just put another wall mirroring on this side, on the left and the right sides here, right? And then this way, it also does the vision thing of like, where are you coming from? If I'm here, I can't actually see where you're coming from, right? Because that was one thing I really liked about this year, was that the long wall prevented vision. If teams were using both lanes of entrance, it's actually kind of an interesting decision of like, oh, where you come from. And I think the next map I'm going to show kind of also talks about this a lot, and like keeping vision and like trying to track people on the map, because I think that's interesting and like important things about positioning. But yeah, and you can also make them a bit higher. I intentionally made these 0.8 meters high, and the reason I did, I'll explain a little bit, is because I was kind of like, it's really funny to me that if you have a hero that can extend up, right, and go up to the full expansion limit, you could technically snipe across the whole screen if you built it that way. I wanted to try and see, like, is it possible to enable a really crazy strategy like that I don't think would necessarily be very good, but would be interesting. It's like, like the tall hero strap, but like crank it up all the way. It's more of like a fun gimmick in this case, where I'm just like, it's just a unique feature of this particular idea. But I think this is the general design concept I wanted to kind of talk about, is the idea of like multiple ways of entry and having like a way, and like making the center point dangerous. That was the main like discussion I wanted to have with this map. And I think that's the two things this map really achieves. But yeah. All right. Moving forward. The intermediate. DE Dust 2 is a very, very awesome map that a lot of CSGO players love. If you haven't played CSGO, this is like the map from CSGO, or CS2, I guess now. Some of the interesting parts here is that it's a looping design, right? The whole point is that like there's like multiple ways to get across the whole map, and it's all like connected, but there's not a lot of intersection necessarily between different paths. So for example, this path and this path don't intersect, but you can loop around, right? And one of the quotes about DE Dust 2 that's really important to me from also another game design talk that I went to is good maps are very conscious of how they control line of sight and how they allow players to move through that level. Here's an example. This is all to get to site A and the top left of that corner, right? From the counter-terrorist, or from the terrorist side. And that's just the names. I apologize if that demonetizes us. Red loop is one thing. You can, however, break from the red loop and go blue loop to then join back to red. Purple gets you also there. And then there's also the green loop that comes back down to red. That's all from the spawn area, right? There's like 4 different loops, essentially, that get you to the same area. I propose to you DE Rust 2026, the Shaur 2025 concept. The whole point of this is it's a lot of looping. It's a lot of loops and a lot of interesting loops, in my opinion. You've got your ramps still and the ability to come off and down. And this is one where I'm like happy with the ramps not being like, you don't have to be able to jump off a ramp at any point to be able to utilize it as a lane of attack. On top of that, you can move around in general the whole map. You can come all the way around from the top, for example, go all the way to the enemy side and then loop into the center point if you wanted to from their ramp. There's a lot of like just open space to work with, but it's sight lined off, so you can't just see each other for free. Right? People can surprise attack you. You don't get free vision across the whole screen necessarily, right? That was at least the goal with this. I think there's some more walls we could add here to make that even more apparent. But, and then, yeah, the big thing is when you're in the center point, I want it to be like, you are completely like, you don't know where they're coming from. As you see the 4 walls around it, kind of, it's like, okay, they can attack me from behind me, from in front of me, from either side of me, from on top. It's a very scary place to be in the center, essentially. And that was kind of where I was running more with this map, is like how do I make it so it's more interesting to navigate, and there's like kind of fun little like ways of flanking and attacking and surprise attacking your opponent, because I think that's some of the more interesting stuff that happens in like a CS:GO map. Thoughts?
Yeah.
And comments.
So I think this map is super cool. I would love to see this map for 1v1. Feels like the Gulag if you do 1v1s. I think this map makes the center point useless. I don't think anyone pushes for the center point with this map.
That's fair.
Like, because if you're on that center point, you're getting 1 point per second, and I think you're also getting roasted.
That's fair. That's fair. It might be a little too punishing, and that's why I'm like, these are concepts and ideas and like things I want to think about going into like map design, right?
But
You
How would
maybe
you
want to
change it,
put, but if you had bumpy road terrain though, like on some of the other approaches, that would make it harder for teams to just kind of like drive past and then shoot while they're driving. And it, as we saw with the bumpy road and some of those first person view cameras, if you didn't have your suspension set, it was like it
Yep,
was
yep.
it was pretty rough,
It was
to put it
pretty
lightly.
rough.
Yep. But
Rough
I think
terrain.
this would definitely need a couple more walls on the outside. That way you don't have
Yeah.
like a full kind of set that you can just see all the way down. But other than that, I think to Preston's point, having it be too hard in the center, I think you have to kind of switch also to the same kind of thing I was saying in the previous map of if you're or if you're making it harder to be on the center buff point, do you want to make sure that it's also less lucrative to just only go for kills?
Yeah,
Very
because I think
fair.
especially with this map, with how open the bases are, I feel like if red team is up, they can just start camping the blue base. Like they're just not going to let you leave, no matter how you try to leave. There's no safe way out. I think this is the coolest 1v1 map ever. I would love
We
this
could
as
even
1v1.
throw this in for
Yes,
1v1.
yes. 1v1.
There's an idea to put this in the 1v1. It'd be like, this is the gulag.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
dude, the gulag, because that's what makes the gulag in Call of Duty the gulag, right? Is there's all these little vision pockets. You have the center circle that doesn't do anything, but like it's there, and like this is that, and I love it. I think this would be super cool.
A dueling map.
It would be way bigger. I would love for 1v1s to become less like chasing as much, or like straight up smacked in right against each other. I would love some long range aspect.
Yep. Yeah. Agree. Yeah. And John, you're right. Also, when it comes to designing maps, it may not be the most interesting spectator experience. So I raise you. Lijiang Tower, my favorite Overwatch map of all time. This map is really fun to watch on. It's also objectively the best Capture the Hill map Capture the Hill, King of the Hill map in all of Overwatch. It's Capture Point in Overwatch, King of the Hill in TF2. We'll get to TF2 in a bit. This map the whole point of this is to try and make it a little less boxy in this next one and have some fun angles and interesting sightlines, because I think that the last map struggles to have sightlines. I give you also the first expansion of the field. Objectively, something we need to start thinking about as we try to incrementally go to the 4v4 field. Here are the things. You got your starting zones not on the wall, because I kind of hate that they're always on the wall. I'm like, why don't we make it like an open space for you to be in your resupply zone? So it's like more interesting to be around the area, and also you have more ways of just leaving it, right? Instead of having like a defined like this is my
the human can refill the robot.
Yeah,
that's true. We can move them back to the walls then. But my point being, like, this is kind of the more fun part of it, right? I think that this right here is a little more interesting as well, because you get your like ramps and ability to go up and down. You have a lot more walls that kind of limit your sight lines. You have different ways of entering and like different like segregated sections in the map, right? Like this bottom left corner and the bottom right corner. I call them the trapezoid, right? This is the trapezoid section. You've got your ability to like attack each other in there. There's like fights that can happen and engage in there. The center point is still actually pretty well defended. Is the thing. It's like, it's not a horrible place to be compared to the last one. Like you're able to defend yourself and you kind of know where people are going to come from. There's like a little bit of an open area in the front and you can kind of put your back to the wall if you want to protect yourself. However, doing that means you're at the center point now, right? And you're like, I'm taking the fight here essentially, right? If you're not going to go look for them, you're going to take the fight there because that's where everyone's going to want to go to. And that's part of like one of the beautiful things about Lijiang Tower is that's like, you can see all these areas where you can fight, but the center point is still the highlight area of where you should be going, right? The next thing, and I think is very fun here, is the fact that they have these little ramps at the top right that allow you to kind of like almost like a comeback mechanic, be able to come up and start to like poke into the center. It's really easy for a team to like dodge, to like avoid this, right? You just come and kind of like push yourself against the wall. You're no longer getting attacked by this, and then you can leave out to your to your side, right? It's not a horrible thing to be able to avoid, but it gives you the ability as a team that needs to try and come back to kind of like try and push them out of the center so you can find them elsewhere or fight them elsewhere. And then finally at the very bottom for fun, and this is why I said it's the expansion, quote unquote, I was like, this is just a funny thing to do. What if balancing jump just at the bottom, just for fun? Thoughts?
I think that's a lot of work for the people on the field for people to probably not use that. And
they're never going to use it, but I was like, I want to put the balancing jump somewhere. Here's
I also think you need to extend the little H walls at the top, above the center point. That needs to go all the way to the ceiling, all the way to the top. Yep, that's got to go all the way to the top, full cover. That way you're not able to just shoot spawn. If we push these back to the top right and top left corners, the spawns.
Fair enough.
Then you gotta have like
let's just
spawn
do it right
protection.
now. Well, let's just do it right now. One sec, gamers.
While
Pretend this was always the way it was. because I
What,
forgot about
Preston?
the reloading.
John says you deserve a cookie because of your beautiful presentation. I agree.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
Yes,
I appreciate
this
it.
is true.
I put so much time and research into this in terms of like what I actually liked in FPS maps, and when I'll put a little bit of my game design minor into this at least. At least I'll try.
We're kind of cooking as a channel. John and
I agree.
Onroy called the RMUC travel stipend perfect. They also love your maps. We've got some real potential for next year.
Yeah.
Shaur, the piece that I love from this map actually was
Mm-hmm.
that your bases weren't on the edge. What if
Real.
I don't think it would take any additional software. What if we cut out a section of extra base RFID cards and put them in a second location?
That was another thought I had. So if we come back here, right?
Yeah, and
we
then
come back
add it
here,
to those bottom
my
squares.
Yup. This is where I had them originally, and I was like, wait a second, I don't love this, but I was like, yeah, the resupply zone.
I love if now the resupply zone and then like a healing zone are distinctly separate. So like you heal and resupply in the resupply zone, but it is in a less convenient place to go. And then you have a healing zone where you can get your health back, but you don't have any projectiles to get because you're not against the wall, right? And I think that would increase.
I think also if you threw in get to the small or get to the like secondary heal zone, if you had to actually cross elevation, that would be another extra point for being able to do that, and have to also it would force teams to kind of design around that if they wanted to use the extra functionality of the extra health zone.
So one last thing that just came to me, and this is an Overwatch thing. Health packs and knowing where they are in the field is something really important. So this having the resupply zones here versus the health zones here, or / the starting zones here, I think actually works really well. And it's like it's another thing that comes from Lijiang Tower. I also called this just to give the name. Yuhe Tower means means oil river because Lijiang means beautiful river, and I was like, it's like a robot like thing, right? Nice. It was just an interesting thing to add on, and the point being like you kind of flow through the map was my idea here. So just to put it in there. But yeah, I think this is probably my best design in terms of like the most interesting and most intricate. It is so much work on the like actually building the field part, and I'm so sorry to the field builders, but it's so cool. It's so fun. Like I think this is also hype as a spectator sport because you can direct there's zones now we can talk about. We can talk about red health zone, red resupply zone, red trapezoid zone, mirror it for the blue side, center point, elevation. There's like actual zones here that we can actually divide up from a spectator side and an esports side as well. And I'm just like, I don't know, not to gush about my own design here a little bit, but I'm really proud of this one. This was the one that I was most happy
gaming.
with.
Alcove Gaming all day.
Familiar with.
Yeah.
Alcove Gaming. Oil River is a good name. Thank you, Honroy.
I like it, Shaur. I think it's got a lot of potential. I think we've hit on a lot of things. I want to I want to wrap up this evening.
Wait, I got one more.
Oh,
I got one more.
You were out of
slides. One more. The expert is my last slide.
What? Oh,
you guys ever played Badlands?
I've never played
Badlands. This map sucks. I made it anyways. Now the funny part with this map here is that these little gray middle pieces in between the walls, these are tunnels. To get to the center point, you can either go through the bumpy road and up elevation, or go through a tunnel, and congratulations, you can attack the center point, and it's all raised, like King of the Hill Badlands. This is my joke map, by the way. This is a meme, but it is kind of funny in my opinion. And I wanted to hear thoughts. Another thing I had here was that you could come up this ramp here on the bottom left and the top right, and be able to attack the center point because it's at the same elevation as you. So you're basically just firing at each other from across at the same elevation. I think that's an interesting design choice of like something we could think about for other maps. And then that's the funny parts here. Anyways,
I think one idea that you had on the previous one with being able to have a secondary healing zone, it would be so cool if we could get like a half health healing zone. And then it's a slower heal. You can't reload, but it's some kind of a utility that's like a not all the way back. That way it could be kind of like a little bit of rotation. I don't know how much that would really give for like a winning stays winning. But like if you had that kind of a healing zone on like the bottom elevation spot, so you could kind of still be shooting like and be a little bit protected with having that health, or because I think the field is small enough that it makes it difficult. Like the total field size is small enough that it's hard to have a second health zone or a second kind of like important, or I guess a third, right? Because you have the center point, you have your bases, and then having the third of some other kind of interaction. I just think that makes it, I don't know if we have enough space for that to be feasible without like a lot of walls, a lot of extra like maze kind of characteristics, and then that ends up pushing a lot of close quarters engagements as opposed to long range stuff. I don't know how much you can really work with there, and that'd be my only concern about it. But I really like a secondary idea, as well as honestly, I think this would be easier to build, especially if you didn't include the bottom ramps, like the bottom and the top ramp for the. I think it would be way easier to build than the oil river, right? But
my oil river, it's so
I like it. Don't get me wrong. I really do like that kind of map design, and I see what you're talking about with the loops as well. And I think there's a lot of loops added in this design that would echo that, as well as being able to still have a lot of buildable potential, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I also did some changes while you were talking, because I saw in chat people were like, "What about retreat?" And I'm like, "Here you go. Now it's hard to retreat. You're welcome, everybody. It's way trickier now."
Yeah, no, I do agree with chat that the chases were electric. I mean, just
yes,
and you see that in RMUC.
That's
right?
why
how many
I
times in
love
RMUC are we saying, "Oh my gosh, are they really going to make it out? Like they're on the other side of the base. They're running. They're running."
That's why I think this first one, obviously, which we talked about, and where the chase is still interesting. And I like that. And I like in this one here, like I think this is what makes this, or sorry, not this one, this one here. I think this what makes this one so much more interesting, that now that there's 2 sections to go back to for healing, the chase is more interesting, because where are you going to go, right? Like once you leave this area here and you're here and your enemy's chasing you this way, you kind of have a decision. Like, do I opt for this one that's way more open, right? And go here to heal, or do I like maybe try and skirt them out into this area? It's a lot more it's a lot less maneuverable. It's more interesting to try and get through. It's harder for them maybe to chase me and go for this one, right? Where I can also get resupplied, because I can't resupply here, right? I think there's something there. I think there's something here, guys. I think there's something here.
Well, watching VT Sentry like weave through their user-controlled robots to be able to get back to the base in a lot of different cases. If you go back and watch the VODs after they got that thing tuned, it was going real close to other bots, but never hitting them. After the first couple days, they had a little bit of like bonks and bumps, but after they could get there, I think having like some kind of like not necessarily precision mechanic, but like you're saying, having to make sure that you focus on the retreat or be able to like get really close and like that wall gap that's like right below on the center point is like, and on the sides are like pretty close in terms of how a robot could fit through. I think that would also like offer some pretty interesting gameplay, but you have to have a lot of them if we're going to have a couple of them, because, you know, obviously you'd want to make sure that you're able to actually get out still and not have too much of an issue, as well as being able to get blocked in, as we saw a whole bunch of other teams doing, like UW and CW or CU. CW.
Sorry, I'm just doing something interesting. Think of something interesting here, just like a thing to think about, because I'm trying to also simplify the design a little bit, because people are like, "How do we build this?" I'm like, "You're right.
Yeah,
you're correct."
Well, and if all those like, I mean, all the blue walls are straight up just like PVC and fabric. So
yeah, these are simple. I'm thinking more about like, so the orange is actually exactly what we use currently. 2 ramps for like sections of like high elevation, right? My thought process here is put the high elevation here at this top area. Because what'll be interesting is you can now use, like, this incentivizes like a balancing thing, because now you're like, I'm here, aha, right? And then coming off and on like this is kind of interesting and kind of a fun little challenge to have. Then I think, removing this bottom ramp is fun. Like, we don't need this. This is just a little stupid little thing I added in there. I think this is now better. I like this more. I don't know. Thoughts, ideas? I think I'm going to cook on this one. I think this is one where it's like, I want to take this and actually try and run with this one if I had that.
I think it's a little bit of dead space up top. I think not many teams are going to be hopping up there. I think that's the only risk you run, is that ends up being dead space as opposed to useful for 90% of teams, 95% of teams.
Thoughts?
I'm a big fan of the map, though.
Wait. Okay, hold on. One last thing. Thoughts about this? Half of the center point. Hold on.
Oh, let me throw back to you. There we go.
Yeah. One sec. Hold on, I need to control down this until it works.
Half of the center point is elevation.
It's elevated. Yeah, you catch my drift. Half of the center point is elevated. Just some weird things.
I think that's getting a little too funky. I think we might need to take the train away from Funky Town.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think this
much.
is where I would settle, is putting the capture point kind of like in this one when it gets out of there. Is like putting the capture point just a little bit higher up here then to make this a little less dead space, you know what I mean? And giving it a little more room to breathe maybe. Like I move all this like here, move all this like here, give it a bit more room to breathe, right? Like just in general, and like just kind of put things a little bit farther apart. And then I think we're cooking somewhere, right?
Yeah,
I do agree with chat. I think this fits really well as a big map. Like if you tell me that all of these gaps easily fit like a robot and a half, then I think I like it. I think it needs to be a pretty dang big map. If this is small, like if this is a 1 to like 1.25 size robot gap between these blue walls, I think it feels congested. I don't want it to feel like an airsoft arena. Does that make sense?
True.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean,
there's something here. I'll think about it.
I'll
cook on it.
Hey, I have a question of the day that I want us to talk about before we wrap, which is why I keep trying to throw to our faces.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. That was great. Honestly, this is peak content. I think we've identified a ton of really great options for the next year. Some really cool game design strategy things. I want everyone to just take a minute. We're going to have a moment of silence. Chat, you guys think. We're all going to think, and then y'all type it. We're going to say it.
All right.
Concisely describe, if you were able to make, just with the snap of the finger, one software change for next year. Because we're talking about mostly saying, don't make any software changes, because software changes aren't really feasible. If you were able to make one software change for next year, what would it be? Take a second and think on it.
I hit my mic.
I'm going to let you cook, chat. Take your full 30 seconds. Think about what your change would be.
I'm locked in.
I've
got mine.
What I want.
All right, we're going to treat it like ordering at a restaurant. I'll just go last because I'll be ready by the time you get to me. So,
sounds good. Matt, you want to go?
I'll go first. I said it earlier. 10 points a kill. 20 points is too much. Makes it really way too impactful if you have any kind of a disconnection. I get it's an engineering challenge. Just makes it really hard to recover if you die 2 or 3 times, especially with now the new rule of not being able to eject your own robot. Your robot goes down, you're gone. You cannot out damage somebody that's going to, like, your robot comes back, insta die, come back, insta die. That's 40 points. Can't do that. 10 points a kill. There you go. Games last a little bit longer, a lot more competitive, a lot more close. We had a lot more very close matchups in the top 8. There you go.
So, I actually have a different software change. You guys know the defense card, the defense RFID card in RMUC?
Yep.
Bring it to RMNA.
Less damage, more
Bring it to RMUL. Bring it to RMUL. I think it gives us more opportunity to add something extra and interesting to the field. That's like a defense point, right? I feel like one of the things we talk about a lot is like snowballing is really easy, and especially like, you know, your counter is like, well, just make kills a little less interesting or a little less impactful, right? My counter is maybe we should give an option for teams to be able to like hunker down a second and like be able to like defend against, like, maybe like there's like a good spot, like I'm thinking of this map, for example, like you put that on the orange little elevations there, you can like sit there, you can take a little less damage, you could do something else like that. I think there's something there in terms of like being able to defend like a little bit better. And yeah, I think it'd just be interesting to have like more cards to play with for field design. Cause I think like we were talking about, like, oh, we wish we had this field card. We wish we had this field card. Right. And so that would be my personal software change. I'll read some of the chat ones, Preston, while you think.
I have too many is my problem. I have too many.
You have too many. You got to pick one.
Well, one's a hot patch, though. Hot fix. Just RMOC just needs to do it. Ref kills shouldn't give victory points. That just shouldn't be a thing, especially if they're not going to let you eject your own robots. So that's not my thing, but like that needs to happen, and it's technically a software change. But that's not cool. It's not cool.
Yeah.
+2.
Oh, I had a better one. Sorry, I'll come back.
Okay. My cool one is I want, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but I want capture point pause mechanics. So if it's a contested capture point, you could do it Overwatch style, where if it's the last,
that was
like,
what I was gonna
points,
say.
it takes you to overtime. Or I think there's other options. Throw the power rune in. What? If you do the power rune, it shuts off the capture point. So like the other teams on there, make tiny little power runes. Each team has a power rune on their side of the map, and if you activate it, it shuts off the capture point. So if the other team has the center, you can turn it off so they stop gaining points while you regroup and regain tempo. I think
I only have one issue with that, is that's a snowball, hardcore snowball. To turn
turn it off
the ability
entirely. I think it's not even just for
Sure,
I think it's turned off entirely for like 15, 20 seconds.
Sure,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
what are you
it's
going to do
still-
if you're ahead? Like, what are you going to
it's
do? Like,
CV.
turn
That's
it off?
all
You want
CV,
it?
though.
You want it to stay on?
It's
That's
true.
all CV. That's all
CV's
CV. And the teams
cool.
that have CV are not going to have an issue with being able to take the capture point, at least from any other team that doesn't have it. And that's going to be all of, like, not all the groups, but a decent amount
They
of
could
groups.
make the power rune a little easier. Like, it's
Yeah,
not
they could, they
impossible
could.
to do by hand.
The one on arm you see it is, but unless you're
I like the idea. I like the idea.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
the idea of like center point should have mechanics that mirror other games. And that was the thing I was going to come back to. I was like, oh, I totally forgot the center point doesn't work like the Overwatch one. That's the biggest problem I have with the map is that it's like, it just isn't like, it's like you, and that's what I think is the problem, is that the center point is so focused, because once you have it, it's so hard to lose if you just kind of like know how to skirt and you are able to cycle well. Right.
Yep.
And I think that's a problem. It's like, you're not incentivized to take a fight somewhere else because you have the center point anyways, right? You're not incentivized to be like, I'm going to meet you here to get that extra 20 points first and knock you out here, as opposed to at the center point, so I can then keep it myself and not have to worry about you just coming back and starting to take back on me, right? But yeah.
Dude, chat's got so many ideas. So many ideas. We got 250
Hard
points to win. A hero rework. I'm so on board for a hero rework.
Hero rework would be great, especially for the scoring mechanism, just like Honroy's saying. I think that would be a really good way to incentivize hero gameplay, because then at least you're putting your hero on there and functioning like a bullet sponge, at least for the most part.
Idea for the hero, hear me out, deployable shield. Just like not Winston Overwatch. We're like, I guess
Winston Overwatch.
Locket of the Iron
Winston
Solari is what you're trying to
Hi
say
there.
here, Shaur.
Yeah.
I'm literally saying, like, you click a button, you have this skill ability on a cooldown, maybe. You click a button.
Defense
and
buff. It's already in the
you
code.
get the
All
defense
you have to do
exactly.
Yeah. Then if you had an activatable
Exactly.
defense buff for your hero, that would be pretty
Activatable
interesting.
defense buff, but like for a short amount of time, like a very like quick burst.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking closer to like a Lucio like bump and it like just gives it for you
3
through, and then
seconds
it slows
or
down.
no 5-second shield, 20
Something
second
like that.
cooldown.
It's solid
Yeah.
locket. Yeah. 100%.
How would
Wington.
I haven't played Call of Duty in a while. Hardpoint, isn't that just like as long as you're on the objective, it captures it? If you're not, it doesn't. Or 3 capture zones? Is that
3 capture zones? I think this is the
okay.
Halo style of like there are 3 capture zones. You capture it and you can leave it, and it still gives you points until someone else comes and captures it. Is the idea. Yeah.
I mean, I thought that's. I think that makes it a little bit. It definitely decentivizes playing for the center. Once you have it, if you get the center, you back off. I think having the center be somewhere that you have to actually actively stay makes it much more of a, like Shaur was saying, a scarier place to be. If you just have to grab it and run away, like I like it more with the Overwatch contesting stuff. Even if you're not competing for the, like, if you're contesting it during the match and it's not at the last few seconds, if it's only the last few seconds that matters, that have the contesting, and so then you could, as long as somebody else is on the objective as you're about to win at like 99 points or whatever, like I think that it's better to do it that way, to at least give the other teams a chance to give a comeback, as opposed to every single time that there's 2 robots on there, there's no victory points being gained. I think it could still be first come first serve then, but at the very, very end, at the end of the game won't end unless there's been like 5 seconds of time that another robot hasn't been on the zone. I think that would make it a lot more interesting too, and extend the games.
Real. That's fair.
So a little bit of an extension on Preston's idea.
I like that.
That's why I kept the software ideas to the very end for question of the day, because like we could go on for hours, right? Like you could do a raid boss, you could do a
So
neutral
many
objective,
things.
you could do all sorts of craziness.
Well,
I mean,
neutral objective would kind of be like the power rune, right? In terms of
sure,
It would be
Power
hyped to
Rune,
have, like,
could be
mid-boss,
VT's
though.
Sentry just chilling in the middle and worth like 60 victory points if you take it down, right? Like
literally Drake. You're thinking like Drake or
well,
like
that's
mid
Baron.
boss.
That's Baron. That's not.
Or
Sure.
I'm thinking
Right.
Drake case though, where it's like you get like a huge like permanent buff or something, right? Similar to the power rune. Like that's what I would want to have.
That's if you so Drake mechanic would be if you actually got like a 3 or 4 or 5 in a row, or not in a row necessarily, just during the duration of the game, and then that would give you a bigger buff, and then it would give you like an extra level per kill that you had, so you could go over level 10. But that just seems pretty snowbally.
We could get really degenerate.
Not snowbally though, because like you don't want it to just be like a complete runaway, like super quick, you know. In terms of the mechanics.
I also like the idea that John put in chat of like multiple capture points, but they swap which one is active at a time.
Yeah.
So it'll turn off and then force you to go somewhere else. That's another thing that's in 2CP in Overwatch, which is nice.
I think
the problem is you need a big map.
Yeah, I just don't think we have the real estate to be able to do that. Similar with the health packs. We
can make the map bigger. Hear me out. What? This is how we get to 4v4 and 5v5 is we just start incrementally making it bigger. Like, let's just do it.
Well, one way to start with that would be Preston's RMTC at the side of the on the sides.
Or you see those corners right there. You know, that could also be kind of a good way to get that started. Just in the Yohe Tower.
All right. Y'all,
Chat,
thank you so much for hanging out. This was a fantastic report. We really appreciate hanging out with y'all. Y'all had such great ideas, so much feedback. Please share this with your teams. Unironically, Shaur, one of the original authors of our cool map updates from last time, probably has some amount of sway in the map updates for this time. So go and get some information from your teams. Have them watch the VOD back on our YouTube or our Twitch or whatever, and throw some comments in there. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know, just add to the comments that are already here. What do you want to see? What would make it better? Do you want longer time to kill? What do you want? What do you want, chat? In the meantime, Sundays, Mondays, Wednesday nights here on Rep, some conglomeration of Preston, Shaur, and Matt will be here hanging out with y'all. Mondays will be Variety, I think, starting this coming week. So if you've got stuff you want to see, maybe it's Dipio, maybe it's Pico Park, maybe it's, Terraria, maybe it's whatever. You just let us know. Sundays and Wednesdays are going to be hardcore robotics stuff.
We play FPSs.
Yeah.
And then we can design off of those. Big ideas. Big ideas. That's why they pay me the $0.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good stuff, chat. Peace.
Bye, chat.